What's up, everybody? I wanted to do a quick little video on something that I get asked on how to do quite a few times, but something that you never ever see, and that is these little guys down here. For a lack of better words, we're going to call them visor brackets or cheek brackets, whatever you want to call it. Essentially, it's a little piece that you install on the inside of the bucket to help keep the shape and structural integrity of the front of any one of your Mandalorian or T-visor buckets. It's something that I think every single bucket should have just because it is a lifesaver for so many different things. But it is extremely easy to make and install, and that's when I kind of go over this little process here. So if you want to kind of see what I'm talking about, it's this super simple little piece you can make. You kind of just stick it in there and then add a little bit of this special fun stuff that we'll go over to make sure that this ain't going anywhere. And as you can see, this thing is not finished on this side yet. We're going to do that in just a minute, but you'll see the stability. The sides will flex before the cheeks change shape. Same thing back here. So I can add a lot of different movement to this and it's not going to change the shape. It's going to stay true. And that's what we want to keep when we have our buckets kind of moving around. So the first thing first, what you want to do is take a measurement. Before you cut into these things, you want to take a measurement to know how big the gap is on the bottom side of your bucket, because they're all going to be different. Once you have this measurement, write that down somewhere, and that way you know how to mark this off after you cut out your visor to make sure it stays true. Now, once you've done that, once you've cut this thing out, you can use that as your material for this. You don't have to go buy anything else. It's already supplied for you. And what I mean by that is this came out of here. I didn't use this exact one, but this came out of here. And what I use and what I do is I take this bit of material, or if you have a flange underneath, so these ones have a flange that we got cut out. And you can take and either cut out the material on the flange or out of the T-visor. Either or, it doesn't really matter. As long as it's the same material as your bucket, it should be perfectly fine. So what we're gonna do is you got your measurement for this, and you wanna go ahead and mark that off long ways here. Not short ways, because that's not gonna give you enough room on either side. So you wanna make sure to go ahead and mark off long ways here. I like to give a little bit extra room just in case, and you make your down cuts on either side. What that's gonna do is give you a rush shape. Obviously, do it way better than this. This is just me messing around. And once you have the shape, you want to go ahead and cut that out either with a Dremel tool or saw, whatever you use to cut these things apart. That's what we're going to use to cut out this material. And this material is what this is going to end up as. I know it's a little crude and ugly now, but trust me. So once you have your piece cut out, you can shape it down, make it nice and smooth so that, it's a nice, decent rectangle, so you don't have to have a big, ugly chunk all over the place. And the extra is for these little bits that you're gonna cut off the ends. So that's why I say I'll just leave a little bit extra. And you wanna cut off these tabs. And what these tabs are gonna go on one side opposite each other to keep a gap from the actual material here and the surface of your visor. You want to have that gap, so what your visor is actually going to do is have a place to slide in between. So that way it sits in there and it's locked in nice. So it keeps, nice little added bonus there, so you can slide that in and out if you need to change it. So once you have essentially this, it's just your long rectangle and your two little short guys, you can go ahead and set those aside, because you're going to want to do the next step, which is heat bend this guy. You can use, if you have a hot enough hair dryer, you can use that. I use a heat gun. One of these bad boys, really cheap, cheapo guy, but it does the job. You want to lay this down on a flat surface if you can, so that way you're not holding on to this and getting yourself all burnt. And just focus in the heat on here back and forth till just for about a minute. And then once you do that, you can set this on top of something in a curved shape that is essentially roughly the same curvature as this. So the longer, wider curve is usually best for this helmet because it has a nice long, wide curve. So what I used was a roll of tape. So after I heated this bad boy up, I just dropped it down on top of this, and then I put a piece of tape over it so that it compressed it down on either side. And once that set, I just let it go ahead and chill out. And then when you take the tape off, it has a nice contoured shape like this. And this isn't gonna go anywhere. That's nice and good. So you just heat shape that, easy peasy, and then you glue your tabs on either side. That's that. Once you have this piece, and these are just super glued in, I mean, I use Gorilla Glue. You can use whatever glue you're using, but I like Gorilla Glue. That's it. This is your piece. It looks ugly and crude right now, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. So you can kind of see that I have this marking on either side here. Now what this is I held my helmet up and put the tab on the inside of the helmet about roughly where I wanted to see it set. And then I marked on either side, on the inside of this, where those lines are. So we just do this on either side. So that way I have my measurement for how wide this is gonna be. And once you have that, it's really just as simple as gluing that in the place that you want it to sit. Now I will say you wanna go ahead and score or rough up the contact sides. So either side of this, and then as well as on the inside of the bucket where this is gonna glue into place. That way it has really, really good adhesion. You don't have to worry about it being too slick and having it pop off. But that's what you wanna do. Now, once you have that and you just tack that in with glue, just glue this to the surface and you let it sit and cure, you go on to the fun part, which is making up this stuff. Now, that's what this is. This is a collection of all the dust and shavings that come from cutting out and sanding and grinding on these guys. So whenever I was cutting out the flanges and this, I had a whole little bunch of this stuff and it was just getting all over, and I swept it up and put it in this little cap. And this is just a spray paint lid. It's nothing big deal. And you can see it's like a dust fine powder. It's pretty nasty. You don't want to breathe it in, but you know, collect it up in a nice little cup just so you can have it, because this is going to be like essentially your JB Weld or your wood putty glue, whatever you want to refer to this as. Bondo, some people use Bondo. This is going to have way more structural integrity than Bondo and all the other stuff. So you want to go ahead and sweep some of this stuff up and just kind of have it around. So that way, you know, you can do this on whatever helmet you want. So I don't know if you've ever done this before. It's kind of like making wood filler. You use the sawdust from the wood, mix it with wood glue, apply it over the surface to fill any holes, and you can sand it smooth. And since it's the exact same color of the wood / resin, since we're doing resin stuff, you won't have any weird inconsistencies with color, and it's not going to stand out too much, just in case you want to keep a low profile on this stuff. I did use a blue piece of resin for this bracket just so you can see it, so you can tell the difference between it, but it's all the same process. All right, so here's what we do. I like to have a little pencil because I don't want to get my fingers too gummed up. But I take my glue, see if I can do this one-handed. See if you can even see what's going on here. Just let that, here, bring that in here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and write a nice thick bead of glue all along the edge in here. Make sure it gets in those cracks and crevices. Just along there. Okay, now that we have that, then we take our nasty resin powder dust stuff and just kind of stick it on there. You know, use as much as you want, doesn't matter. Use a lot, because you're gonna blow the excess off and everything's gonna be okay. And just kind of mat it down in there. And take your eraser and push it right into the super glue. And what that's doing is it's pushing all those fibers, all those little particulate right into that super glue. And when that hardens, it's going to create a super, super nice, rigid, really strong bond that is going to be a lot better than a lot of putties or other types of glue. All right. Kind of dust that away a little bit. All right. And you just kind of repeat this process just a few times. So again, what I'm going to do is, I know it's still not dried yet, and that's fine. Go ahead and another bead of super glue all over this, and get a little up here and stuff too is fine. Add more of this. It's almost like batting for fiberglass. It's essentially a similar process, not the same, but similar. All right, and this is gonna make a huge mess, so just be prepared for that. It will make a mess. All right, once I feel like I've got a pretty decent amount of stuff on there, I'm gonna go ahead. Don't do that, that's not smart. Go ahead and get the excess away. And already you can see it's a nice buildup in there. So it's not too bad. It's a nice kind of thick buildup. And what we're gonna do is go ahead and add another layer of super glue. This is really hard to come out, I don't know why. And just kind of stick that into itself. Just kind of give it a nice overall coat all over the place. And again, I can use our trusty eraser and just kind of push that stuff in there. I think that's pretty good on this. This is, and depending on how thick or how much you want to try to put on here to make it secure, you can do this process a few different times, so you don't have to worry about it too much. So you can fill it up as much as you want or knock it down as much as you want. I always want to make sure while it's still wet to kind of go through and make sure I knock out anything that's kind of in the groove, my little visor groove there. Go ahead and take this. There we go. There we go. Oh, don't do this. Oh, gross. Yep, that was gonna be fun to peel off later. All right. So this is, so that's what we did. We went ahead and basically added a filler with the resin dust and super glue. This is you wanna let this set up for at least 24 hours because there's gonna be a lot of layers in there. It's gonna take a while to dry. But once it does dry, it turns into this really hard, like resin chunk, and that is gonna stick on really good. And then if you wanna clean it up, make it look fancy, you can go ahead and sand or file that down. And it's gonna sand essentially the same exact as this, so you can make it pretty smooth if you want. It doesn't really matter to me because you're never gonna see the inside of that. And that's how this attaches. I will say one more thing before I forget, is that when you put your bracket in, you do wanna give excess. You wanna make sure to overshoot your T-visor opening, so that way you do have some room for the visor itself to slide in between here and the helmet. You don't want to have these little bracket bits sitting on the edge of either side. You want to have it where it's got a nice gap in between. This one's a lot smaller, but you want to have a gap in between this post and your visor opening. That way you can slide one in and inside it and out pretty easily without it hanging up on anything. But that's pretty much it. And you have a really, really solid locked in, and it ain't going nowhere. And that's gonna save you a lot of time, a lot of heartache. It's not gonna warp on you. It's not gonna pop out. If you drop it, it's not gonna do any damage too much other than what else its damage is gonna be. But there you go. That's how I do my little visor brackets. I hope that makes sense. And if not, I tried. So if y'all have any questions about this process, or if I didn't cover something or forgot something, go ahead and hit me up in the comments. Send me a DM and I'll try to explain myself a little bit better. But there you have it. Just a little bit of dust and a little bit of glue and some parts and pieces that you already have laying around, and you find yourself with a much sturdier bucket. Shoots.